I never believed in ghost stories, but something about that abandoned building always gave me the creeps. It was an old factory on the outskirts of town, a place everyone avoided. The locals called it the Echo, a name that always sent shivers down my spine. No one ever explained why, but rumors about it had circulated for years. Disappearances, strange noises, flickering lights when the place should have been pitch black. Curiosity got the best of me one late summer evening. I was out with a group of friends, and after a few drinks, the bravado kicked in. They dared me to go inside to prove that all the ghost stories were just that, stories. I wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially not in front of my friends. With my phone in hand, I pushed open the rusted gate and made my way through the overgrown weeds to the entrance. The door was slightly ajar, creaking as I pushed it open further. The smell hit me first, damp, moldy, like something had been rotting inside for years. My friend's laughter echoed faintly behind me as I stepped inside, the door closing with a loud thud. The air was thick with dust, and every step I took echoed off the crumbling walls. My flashlight illuminated old machinery, long forgotten and covered in cobwebs. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but I told myself it was just the cold air seeping through the broken windows. I wandered deeper into the building, the light from my phone barely cutting through the darkness. That's when I heard it, a faint whisper, almost imperceptible. I froze, straining to hear, but there was nothing. I laughed nervously, chalking it up to my imagination. But then I heard it again, this time clearer. It was my name, James. I spun around, but no one was there. My heart started to race as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be coming from all around me, surrounding me, echoing off the walls. James, James. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The voices were too clear, too purposeful. They weren't just random sounds, they were calling me, pulling me deeper into the building. Against my better judgment, I followed the voices, my legs moving on their own. They led me to a door at the far end of the factory. It was slightly open, a soft light glowing from within. My hand trembled as I pushed it open, revealing a small room. Inside was nothing but an old chair, facing a cracked mirror on the wall. I stared at my reflection, and for a moment, everything seemed normal. But then, the reflection began to change. My eyes widened in horror as my reflection smiled at me. A smile I wasn't making. My heart pounded in my chest as the reflection leaned forward, its eyes dark and hollow. "Come closer," it whispered. I stumbled back, but the door slammed shut behind me. The whispers grew louder, more frantic. I covered my ears, but it did nothing to drown out the sound. The reflection stood up from the chair, stepping out of the mirror as if it were a doorway. My breath caught in my throat as the figure approached me, its smile widening. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. It reached out, its cold hand brushing against my cheek. The world spun around me, and I felt myself falling into darkness. When I woke up, I was outside the building, lying on the ground with my friends standing over me. They looked terrified, and it took me a moment to realize why. My reflection wasn't in the factory anymore. It was with me, inside me. I haven't been the same since that night. Every time I look in the mirror, I see it. The darkness in my eyes, the smile that isn't mine. I hear the whispers every night, growing louder, more demanding. They want me to go back to the Echo, to return to the place where it all began. And I know, deep down, that one day I won't be able to resist. The weeks that followed were a blur of restless nights and growing paranoia. My friends tried to console me, insisting that it had all been a hallucination brought on by the eerie atmosphere of the factory. But I knew better. The thing inside me was real, and it was growing stronger. The reflection, the other me, started appearing in places other than the mirror. I'd catch glimpses of it in the corner of my eye, standing in shadows, watching me with that unnerving smile. At first, it was only for a split second, but as time went on, it lingered longer, its presence more palpable. One night, as I lay in bed, I felt a cold hand brush against my arm. I jolted upright, but there was nothing there. My heart raced as I heard the whispers again, louder this time, echoing through my room. They were no longer just in my head. They were all around me, filling the space with their sinister tone. I tried to drown them out with music, but the whispers seeped through, twisting the lyrics into something dark and terrifying. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the factory, the chair, the cracked mirror, and that twisted version of myself stepping out of it. One night I snapped. Desperate for answers, I began researching the history of the factory. What I found only deepened my dread. The factory had been abandoned for decades, after a series of unexplained deaths and disappearances. The owner, a man named Jonathan Blythe, was said to have been involved in occult practices, using the factory as a front for his experiments in dark magic. The rumors spoke of a ritual gone wrong, something that had opened a gateway between our world and something else, something that should have stayed buried. The factory was said to be cursed, and those who ventured too far inside were never the same again. But it wasn't just a curse, it was a trap, a way to lure in unsuspecting souls, to feed the thing that lurked within. The more I read, the more I understood. The reflection wasn't just a ghost or a demon. It was a fragment of whatever had been unleashed in that factory, a part of the darkness that had been waiting for someone like me to come along. It wanted to consume me, to take over completely, and the only way to stop it was to break the connection, to destroy the mirror. The thought of going back to the echo filled me with dread, but I knew I had no choice. The whispers were becoming unbearable, driving me to the brink of madness. I gathered what little courage I had left and made my way back to the factory. The building loomed in the darkness, even more menacing than before. I hesitated at the gate, the memories of that night flooding back. But the whispers pushed me forward, urging me to finish what had been started. The inside of the factory was just as I remembered it, cold, decaying, filled with the echoes of things long forgotten. I made my way to the room at the end of the hall, the one with the chair and the mirror. The door creaked open, revealing the scene that had haunted my nightmares. The mirror was cracked, just as it had been before, but the reflection was waiting for me this time. It stood in the center of the room, staring at me with those hollow eyes, its smile widening as I stepped closer. "Come closer," it whispered again. My hands trembled as I picked up a rusted pipe from the floor. I knew what I had to do, but every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, to get out before it was too late. The reflection took a step forward, its smile turning into a twisted grin. I swung the pipe with all my strength, shattering the mirror into 1,000 pieces. The sound was deafening, a high-pitched scream that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The reflection shattered along with the glass, its twisted form breaking apart into dark, swirling shadows. For a moment, everything was silent. I stood there, breathing heavily, my heart racing as the last of the glass tinkled to the ground. But then, the whispers returned, louder and more frantic than before. The shadows from the mirror began to coalesce, forming a dark mass that oozed toward me. I stumbled back, dropping the pipe as the darkness reached out, tendrils wrapping around my ankles, pulling me down. I tried to scream, but the shadows filled my mouth, choking me as they pulled me into the floor, into the very foundation of the factory. I was sinking, being dragged into the darkness, my vision blurring as the whispers grew louder, more demanding. My strength faded, and just as I thought I was about to be consumed, a blinding light filled the room. The darkness recoiled, hissing as it retreated into the cracks and crevices of the factory. I was left gasping on the cold floor, the whispers fading into nothing. The light dimmed, and I saw a figure standing in the doorway. A man, his face obscured by shadows. "Leave this place," he said, his voice firm but kind. "It's not your time." Before I could respond, the figure vanished, leaving me alone in the ruined room. I didn't need to be told twice. I scrambled to my feet and bolted out of the factory, not stopping until I was far away, the cold night air filling my lungs. I never returned to the echo after that night. The whispers have stopped, and the reflection no longer haunts me.